Croatia's Catholic identity doesn't shout, but it shines. In a Europe that is growing spiritually indifferent, Croatia stands not as a relic, but as a lighthouse. Young priests and religious are rising, not from societal pressure, but from interior encounter. Their vocations spring not from tradition alone, but from fire. They are not leaving the world, they are stepping into it with Christ at the center.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Okay guys, we're going to be checking out a video today. All right, and this is a recommendation. Okay, this is titled Croatia's Catholic Comeback, a Modern Day Miracle. Okay, the person that recommended this video said I'm going to know everything about Croatia from this video, like even their little history and all of that. Okay, so I'm so excited checking this out because I've decided on like getting to know Croatia more. All right, so without further ado, please stay subscribed, and if you find this video interesting, always like, share and comment. Okay, so let's jump into this.
Across the European continent, a silent erosion of faith has taken hold. Cathedrals stand hollow, vocations wither, and the sacred is often traded for the secular. But then there is Croatia, against all odds, in a world that has seemingly outgrown God. Small Balkan nation is defying the narrative. What we are witnessing is not merely
Hold on guys, Croatia is part of Balkan. Okay. Maybe of course we are learning. All right, so maybe I never knew Croatia is part of Balkans. Okay.
cultural reaction, it is a spiritual awakening. In the land that once bled for its faith under Ottoman, fascist, and communist regimes, Catholic soul is rising again, not in memory, but in power. Youth are gathering in the streets, not for protest, but for public rosaries. Students are waking up before dawn, not for screens, but for daily mass. Online spaces, once flooded with vanity, are now echoing with scriptural reflections, Marian devotions, and Eucharistic reverence. Cead, what is fueling this surge? Is it a pushback against the moral confusion of modern Europe, a rediscovery of national identity forged in martyrdom and miracle? Or could it be that God is visiting this nation, calling the remnant to stand, to witness, to become a light to the nations, whatever the cause? One thing is certain, the flame of faith in Croatia is not flickering out, it's catching fire, and that fire is beginning to spread. After World War II, Croatia found itself absorbed into the Communist Federation of Yugoslavia, governed by the iron grip of Marshal Josip Broz Tito, a regime that was not merely hostile to religion, but systematically atheistic. Under Tito, the state did not merely marginalize the Catholic Church, it sought to dismantle it. The Eucharist, the Rosary, the very name of Jesus, these were seen not as sacred treasures, but as threats to state control. The goal was clear: to render the Church a hollow shell, stripped of influence, silenced beneath the shadow of totalitarianism. And so began a calculated, multi-pronged campaign. Religious orders were dissolved, Catholic schools shuttered, and church land seized and nationalized. The state's secret police, the UDBA, watched everything. Priests, bishops, even little old ladies in pews. Homilies were recorded, confessions surveilled. A child who served Mass might later be interrogated. If you practiced your faith, you paid a price: social exclusion, lost job opportunities, even imprisonment. Priests were jailed, nuns were exiled, and yet, despite all this, the flame of faith did not die. It went underground. Liturgies moved to kitchens and barns. Catechesis was whispered in hallways. Grandmothers became theologians by necessity, teaching the creed beside the stove by candlelight. Baptisms took place behind closed doors. Confessions happened in the dead of night, in hushed voices, by lamplight. The people turned to Mary not only as mother, but as fortress. When all else was stripped away, she remained. Her image passed from hand to hand like a sacred resistance emblem. This was not submission. This was spiritual warfare in exile. Every sign of the cross became an act of holy defiance, and though the church's institutional voice was gagged, her witness grew louder through the quiet fidelity of the faithful, the priest who kept preaching in prison, the child who learned to pray before she learned to write, the mother who clothed her children not just in wool, but in prayer. In time, this hidden church took root deeper than politics could ever reach. The world above saw silence, but underneath, grace was fermenting, like seeds buried in winter. Faith was not
This is really amazing. Like, despite all they've been through, like their love for God, their belief for God was not buried. Like, they still carry on behind closed doors, behind the scenes. Their faith in God grew deeper and deeper, regardless of what they've been through. This is really nice.
dead. It was dormant, waiting, preparing. And it is this underground inheritance passed through generations that helps explain what we're seeing today in Croatia. These young people filling the pews were raised by the children of those who once knelt in cellars. Their faith was never merely cultural, it was sacrificial, subversive, and therefore unshakable in the crucible of persecution. Croatia's Catholic identity was not erased, it was forged. And now, as the West forgets what it once knew, Croatia remembers. What was whispered in basements is now proclaimed from the rooftops. What was once hidden is now burning in public squares. This is no nostalgia. This is resurrection. When the lights of religious freedom were snuffed out, faith in Croatia did not die, it deepened. It retreated from the visible, institutional, public square and took root in the soul of the domestic church. What was once proclaimed from pulpits became whispered from mother to child, from grandfather to grandson, around wood-burning stoves and beneath dim candlelight. The church was no longer only bricks and mortar, it became memory, blood, and breath. In the silence enforced by surveillance, the faithful did not stop worshipping, they adapted. The kitchen became the sanctuary, the bedtime lullaby became the catechism, a grandmother's trembling Hail Mary became the anchor of a hidden theology, passed down not on parchment, but in the pauses between soup and sacrifice, each time a child made the sign of the cross before a modest meal. It was a declaration we still believe. Priests, silenced from their pulpits, preached with their lives, they baptized in basements, heard confessions in whispers, and anointed the sick behind curtains of secrecy. Their suffering was their homily, and the people responded not with fear, but with fidelity. Every mass attended under the eye of the secret police was an act of holy defiance. Every whispered prayer was a spiritual roar, in a time when identity was being rewritten by the state. Faith became the stronghold of Croatian identity. The liturgy, still in the native tongue, kept the heart of the nation beating. Sacred song preserved what politics tried to erase. The faith, though hunted, became the defender of the nation's soul. In this dark night, Croatia didn't merely survive, it was prepared. Like Israel in exile, her identity was forged not in the palace, but in the wilderness. Faith endured, not in defiance of the world alone, but in allegiance to the one who reigns above it. In 1991, Croatia declared independence and was plunged into the inferno of war. The nation entered a valley of shadow and blood. The Croatian War of Independence tore through towns and families with unspeakable violence. Over 20 lives lost, hundreds of thousands displaced, cities scorched, futures disfigured. Yet in the midst of the destruction, when governments fractured and bullets replaced ballots, one institution did not collapse. The church stood, not in retreat, but on the front lines. When homes crumbled, it was the chapel that became shelter. When bombs fell, it was the altar that became a table of hope. Priests risked their lives to bring the sacraments into bomb shelters and field hospitals. Baptisms were celebrated under candlelight, with rainwater collected from cratered roofs. Soldiers clutched rosaries like shields, not out of superstition, but out of trust in the only one who never left them. In the ruins of shattered villages, funeral masses were offered amid shell fire. The Eucharist was not paused, it was proclaimed, not because it was convenient, but because it was necessary. In a world collapsing into chaos, the sacraments were the last sacraments of order and meaning. The church became more than a refuge, it became the living heart of Croatia. It fed the body. Yes, but it also preserved the soul. When the guns finally fell silent, the rebuilding did not begin with bricks, it began with prayer. Mourning families brought their trauma to the foot of the cross. Liturgies of healing began. Faith-based counseling sprang up. And slowly, from the ashes, the Croatian spirit was raised not by policy, but by piety. The church did not just survive the war, it midwifed the resurrection of a nation. In those years, faith became more than tradition, it became a language of resurrection, speaking life into a people scorched by death. After the final shell fell silent and the smoke cleared, Croatia stood not just amid rubble, but amid a spiritual identity crisis. The war had left more than buildings in ruins. It had fractured souls. Families were torn apart. Trust was shattered. The question was no longer how to survive, but why? What do you rebuild when your very sense of self has been scorched by violence? The deepest need wasn't roads or walls, it was hope, a reason to live again. And in that moment of national Gethsemane, the church stepped forward not as a relic of the past, but as a shepherd for the future. It had walked with the people through the fire, and now it led them toward healing. The sacraments became medicine. Memorial masses became spaces where the grief of a people could be lifted toward heaven. Confession brought clarity. Spiritual direction offered peace. In parish halls and candlelit sanctuaries, enemies prayed side by side because reconciliation didn't begin in courtrooms. But before the crucifix, the church became the beating heart of Croatia's recovery, not because of political strategy, but because it alone held the moral vocabulary needed to reassemble a people's dignity. When government officials laid bricks, the church laid foundations. When cynicism whispered to the youth, the church proclaimed truth. And as Croatia stepped back onto the world stage, it did so not as a nation merely rebuilt, but as a nation resurrected. The Catholic faith had moved from survival to structure, from consolation to identity. Faith became the compass, the anchor, the cornerstone of Croatia's new self-understanding. This was not nostalgia, it was a national Eucharist, a thanksgiving offered not just for freedom, but for meaning. And in that offering, Croatia found itself again, not just as a country, but as a people called by God. At a time when much of Western Europe is watching its churches empty and its youth drift into a haze of secularism and spiritual apathy, something radically different is happening in Croatia. Here, the young are not leaving the church, they are leading it. While many in the West dismiss faith as outdated ritual or moral burden, Croatian youth are embracing Catholicism with fire and freedom. Picture this: hundreds of college students kneeling in the public square, praying the rosary aloud, hands holding beads instead of smartphones. Before sunrise, young men and women are choosing daily mass over sleeping in or scrolling. This is not quiet piety, it is public witness. A Eucharistic procession winds through city streets, and it is youth at the front, transforming roads into altars, intersections into sanctuaries. The church is no longer something they attend, it is something they embody. Lent is lived together. Fasting becomes friendship. And accountability is holy camaraderie, and online. These young Catholics are evangelizing the algorithm. Instagram pages filled with scripture and sacred art. Podcasts on theology and testimony climbing the charts. Live streams of adoration with thousands tuning in. They don't wait for programs, they build communities, Bible groups, night vigils, Catholic festivals, pro-life marches, and the data confirms what the Spirit is igniting Nearly 60% of young Croatian Catholics attend Mass monthly. And vocations are on the rise. This is not nostalgia for tradition, it is a spiritual renaissance. These are not youth repeating the past. They are prophesying the future with creativity, courage, and deep Eucharistic love. Croatia's young people are not inheriting the faith, they are resurrecting it. And in doing so, they're reminding the world Catholicism is not dead, it is young again. What we are witnessing in Croatia is not just a return to church pews, it is a digital Pentecost. Young Catholics are no longer waiting for the church to catch up with technology. They are bringing the church into the very heart of the digital age, from TikTok to Spotify, from YouTube podcasts to Instagram Reels. The faith is no longer confined to basilicas, it's going viral. With a tap and a swipe, the gospel is reaching hearts that might never step inside a sanctuary. Instagram feeds filled with Eucharistic adoration, scripture quotes, and behind-the-scenes glimpses of daily Mass are turning social media into a kind of 24-hour chapel. A story isn't just an update, it's a witness. A reel isn't just content, it's a catechesis. Podcasts recorded in bedrooms and coffee shops are transforming headphones into pulpits, where young people hear Catholic truth on the way to class or work. And it doesn't stop at the screen. At Catholic festivals like Mladifest, over 40 youth gather annually not for entertainment, but for Eucharistic worship, confession, and liturgical encounter that runs into the sunrise. Art, music, dance, and digital design are being harnessed to evangelize with beauty. And here's the miracle, this movement isn't being managed from the top down, it's springing up from the grassroots. Young people are forming digital communities that become sacramental families in real life, fasting together, and even discerning vocations together. They're not just consuming media, they're building the church. Every post, every podcast, every reel is a brick in the spiritual architecture of the new evangelization. This isn't a passing trend, it's a prophetic movement, and it is awakening a generation that doesn't just know the faith, they are setting it on fire. While much of Europe faces a vocational winter where seminaries are empty, ordinations are rare, and priesthood is seen as irrelevant or even undesirable. Croatia is experiencing a spiritual springtime in places like France, Germany, and Ireland. The priesthood is aging fast. Many dioceses are bracing for silence. But in Croatia, the opposite is unfolding. According to the Croatian Bishops' Conference, the number of priests under 35 has risen nearly 30% in the last decade. Seminaries are not closing, they're thriving. And this surge is not the result of nostalgia or obligation. It's the fruit of a vibrant, youthful, and public faith culture. Here, the priesthood is not seen as a sad sacrifice, but as a joyful vocation. Young men are not giving up life, they are embracing it in full for the sake of Christ. One seminarian put it simply, "I'm not leaving my life behind, I'm choosing to live it entirely for Him." And these priests, they are anything but distant. They're hosting adoration for youth, hearing confessions until midnight after Catholic festivals, and launching faith-based digital content. They are present in universities, coffee shops, music festivals, even TikTok. They don't preach from ivory towers, they walk beside the people. In doing so, they make the priesthood visible, approachable, and alive. Vocations in Croatia aren't born in isolation, they blossom within community. Prayer groups, Bible studies, and Eucharistic-centered friendships form the rich soil where God's call can be heard and discerned. And society responds. Priests are respected not as relics of a bygone era, but as beacons of hope in a noisy world. In Croatia, priest is not out of place, he is right at the heart of the culture. Not just called, but welcomed. Not just surviving, but leading in the Croatian soul. Mary is not distant. She is not a symbol to be studied. She is a mother to be known. in every kitchen, above every child's bed, in the fields and at the front lines. Her presence is tangible for the people of Croatia. Mary is not merely Mother of God, she is Mother of this nation. In war, they whispered her name. Under communism, they clutched her image. In exile, they carried her in their pockets. The Hail Mary became more than a prayer. It was a heartbeat, a lullaby, a cry for help. At Moja reakcija, Croatia's national shrine, hundreds of thousands walk for miles, barefoot and burdened, to kneel before the Black Madonna not for spectacle, but for solace. They don't come as tourists, they come as children returning home. In Sinj, where tradition holds that Our Lady once defended the town from Ottoman invasion, she is carried through the streets like a queen, and rightly so. Candles line the roads, rosaries sway in every hand. No one orchestrates it, it's the spontaneous reverence of generations. And in Medjugorje, though beyond Croatia's borders, Croatian youth flock to the hills, answering what they call a personal call from the mother. They climb in silence, they descend in tears. Her voice does not condemn it, converts. This Marian devotion has never been an event, it has been a survival. When churches were shuttered, when priests were imprisoned, when hope felt extinct, it was the quiet flame of Our Lady that kept burning. Through empire, tyranny, and war, only one presence remained unchanging: Mary. She is the gentle warrior, the faithful intercessor, the heart of Croatia's resistance and rebirth, not a relic, not a myth, but the living fire of a people who have learned to survive by holding her hand. In Croatia, Catholicism is not a subculture, it is the cultural backbone. Faith doesn't merely survive within the walls of churches, it shapes the very air Croatians breathe. In folk songs, you hear echoes of sacred hymns. In town squares, you see statues of Our Lady standing beside war memorials, not as decoration, but as declarations God has walked with this people. From Baroque churches anchoring medieval cities to Marian frescoes etched into public buildings. Catholic art doesn't just adorn Croatia, it defines it. Education reflects the same integration. Catholic schools, once sidelined, are now recognized as premier institutions, forming students not only in academics but in character, rooted in truth, virtue, and sacramental identity. Places like the Classical Catholic Gymnasium of Zagreb consistently rank among the nation's best, producing citizens who are not only educated but formed, even in lawmaking. The Church's moral voice carries weight, not as coercion, but as conscience. Legislators consult bishops on matters like abortion, marriage, and education not because they must, but because they trust that Catholic teaching grounds society in human dignity. Sacraments are not optional ceremonies, they are cultural rites of passage. Baptism, marriage, funerals, they rhythm life itself. And major feast days like the Assumption or Easter aren't just days off, they're national events, where processions fill the streets and church bells proclaim belonging. National TV airs Mass. Catholic hymns are performed in outdoor concerts. Shrines become not only places of pilgrimage, but venues for charity and culture. And above all, faith informs the Croatian identity. Family is seen as a sacrament, suffering as a participation in Christ's passion, sacrifice for the homeland as martyric. The values most celebrated, loyalty, humility, mercy, are not merely social virtues, they are theological fruits. In Croatia, faith is not background, it is bloodline. It's not disappearing, it's defining. In the quiet hills and fading villages of rural Croatia, something remarkable is unfolding. Faith is not only saving souls, it's reviving entire communities. After years of war, migration, and economic neglect, many small towns and countryside parishes faced depopulation and despair. But now, because of the enduring presence of Catholicism and the magnetic draw of pilgrimage sites like Moja reakcija, Sinj, And Trsat, these forgotten corners are breathing again. Every pilgrim who walks the old Marian paths brings more than prayers, they bring life. They fill local inns, eat in village cafes, buy handmade rosaries, candles, and traditional vestments. In this way, sacramental life has become an engine of local renewal. This is not commercialized religion, it's consecrated economy. It's not tourism dressed up in piety, it's a holy exchange. The traveler finds grace, the town finds sustenance. Artisans are rediscovering dignity through craft. Bakers shape their faith into loaves that feed both the altar and the traveler. Catholic bookstores, once small parish counters, are now vibrant spaces where theology, beauty, and livelihood intersect. Families that once felt compelled to leave their ancestral homes for urban jobs are now staying not out of survival, but because faith is making staying possible. This is what the church means by integral human development. It's not just about GDP, it's about grace-infused culture. The rural revival of Croatia offers us a glimpse of sustainable, faith-rooted renewal, one that preserves tradition, generates honest work, and gives people a reason to remain here. Liturgy doesn't end at the altar, it flows into workshops, bakeries, and open-air markets. Where Christ is adored, the land is restored. As one local priest said, where the Eucharist is enthroned, even the vineyards grow sweeter. In Croatia's countryside, faith has not just built churches, it has built communities. It doesn't merely nourish the spirit, it sets the table for a whole way of life. Across Croatia today, something extraordinary is happening. Faith is no longer whispered, it is sung, shown, celebrated in the heart of public life, once suppressed under the weight of communism. When Eucharistic processions were driven underground and Marian devotions confined to candlelit kitchens, Catholicism is now stepping back into the sunlight with boldness and beauty. Public squares that once bore witness to surveillance now echo with adoration. Corpus Christi processions move reverently through modern city streets. Open-air masses gather families in parks and plazas. What was once hidden is now honored. Catholicism in Croatia is no longer a private matter, it has become a communal proclamation, an outward sign of an inner resurrection. And the culture is responding. The arts are awakening. Ancient hymns are performed by national choirs at civic events. Sacred paintings and icons are being showcased not only in chapels, but in museums, cultural fairs, and public galleries. The stories of the saints are reimagined in documentaries, stage plays, and even children's comic books, not to dilute the faith, but to deliver it afresh. This is not a loss of reverence. It is a recovery of relevance. Croatia is remembering that its cultural identity and its Catholic soul have always been intertwined. The sacred is not retreating into silence, it is breaking forth as song. In villages and towns, the rhythms of daily life are still paced by the church bell. The liturgical calendar marks the seasons. Easter, Christmas, and the Assumption are not simply religious festivals, but national feasts. Towns are dressed in sacramental symbols, and state broadcasters televise solemn liturgies as events of national dignity. Political leaders attend public masses not as a formality, but as a shared recognition that the Church is a guardian of the nation's moral memory. But this isn't forced. This isn't cultural coercion. It's heritage rediscovered. Croatia isn't trying to impose religion on culture, it's inviting culture back to the altar. In a Europe where many nations are erasing their sacred past, Croatia is resetting the table. It is lighting the candles again. It is preparing the feast and calling the family home. Catholicism isn't a nostalgic ornament, it is the language of meaning. It shapes how Croatians understand family, suffering, sacrifice, and hope. This revival in the public sphere is not a retreat into the past, it is a reclamation of roots. Croatia is not clinging to Catholicism, it is standing on it. It is finding the courage to say, not just in church, but in song, sculpture, education, and government. We are a people who remember. We remember our martyrs. We remember our mothers praying the rosary in silence. We remember our processions halted and now restored. The church is no longer merely present, it is proclaimed. And in that proclamation, Croatia is rediscovering not just its religion, but its very soul, while much of secular Europe is closing church doors and forgetting its spiritual vocabulary. Croatia is blazing a different path, one rooted in ancient tradition, yet carried forward with fearless innovation. This revival is not reactive nostalgia. It is a bold proclamation of faith that is both deeply Catholic and unmistakably contemporary. In cities and villages alike, the church in Croatia is not hiding in silence, it's singing in the open. And at the center of this new evangelization is a generation of young Catholics who are unapologetically faithful. They do not practice because they were told to, they live the faith because they choose it. They are not escaping the modern world, they are baptizing it. Unlike the flamboyant trends of fleeting spiritual movements, the Croatian renewal is quiet, pure, pervasive. You see it in the teenager whispering the rosary on a city bus, in the university student who begins her day at daily mass before a full schedule of classes, in families who spend their summer weekends on pilgrimage instead of beach resorts, not out of obligation, but out of a longing for presence. The liturgical calendar orders their lives. Advent, Lent, and Easter are not merely church seasons, they are soul seasons, woven into the fabric of daily existence. This is not a faith confined to history books or solemn anniversaries. It is dynamic, it is young, it is burning. Tradition is not merely preserved, it is embodied. Prayer groups, catechism nights, spiritual retreats, Eucharistic adoration. These are not imposed from above, they are initiated from below. Croatia's Catholic youth are not waiting to inherit the church, they are already leading it. They are forming Bible study fellowships, launching digital missions, reviving ancient hymns in modern settings. Theirs is a faith that walks in sandals and scrolls through apps. And all of this happens not in a bubble, but in full engagement with the world. The faith here is strong without being combative. It is orthodox without being rigid. It is missionary without being politicized. Croatia's Catholic identity doesn't shout, but it shines. In a Europe that is growing spiritually indifferent, Croatia stands not as a relic, but as a lighthouse. Young priests and religious are rising, not from societal pressure, but from interior encounter. Their vocations spring not from tradition alone, but from fire. They are not leaving the world, they are stepping into it with Christ at the center. And as this generation continues to root itself in prayer, in sacrament, in scripture, the church in Croatia becomes more than a national institution, it becomes a national soul. This is not just a renewal, it is a witness, a small nation, forged in suffering and fidelity, now radiating spiritual light across a continent weary with unbelief. Croatia is not trying to be influential, it is trying to be faithful. And precisely because of that, it is becoming a beacon, a reminder to all of Europe and to us that the church is alive, and that faith, when lived with courage, is still the most powerful force in the world.
Okay, so from my own little understanding before even seeing this video, okay, like the the Catholic Church was never lost or buried. It was never lost or buried in Croatia. I think what happened is that it's they don't just talk about it, they don't just like bring it in the open for the whole world to see or to know about their faith. I think that's just it. But saying like the Catholic Church was lost before and then now they are trying to like bring it back. I don't think that is true. I think Croatia has been in the Catholic faith long time ago. They just don't show it to the world. They just don't bring it out to the open. That is why some of us don't get to know their faith. I think the difference between way back and now is that way back they were just like practicing it behind closed doors, but now they are like in the open doing their thing. All right. The caption of this video says Croatia's Catholic comeback. All right. The Catholic Church was not lost before, to the best of my knowledge and understanding. Okay. You can as well correct me in the comment section if the Catholic Church was once lost in Croatia and then it's finally coming back now. I am in the journey of learning Croatia. Okay. So your corrections are welcome. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for recommending this. See you guys on my next one. Bye.